My story starts just before Christmas a few years back. My mum and dad were going through their breakup. My mum and younger sisters, Annie and Jade, and I moved out for a fresh start. My mum and dad mutually agreed to this being the way to better the situation. We moved to a place not too far from where we lived, so we could stay at our schools, be near our friends, and so Mum could be near work. It was for Christmas 2011. I was 14 at the time. My sisters, they were 11 and 8, and it was our first Christmas without our dad. It did feel odd, but it was great, all being together in this new house. Since I was little, my best friend, Bess, and I gave each other random presents every Christmas. Nothing extravagant, just enough for a few laughs. This year was the same, only Bess had a different idea. I kept the present in my room, as I usually did, in case it could be something a little bit too embarrassing to open in front of my mum. After opening my presents, I left to my room with Jade. On the present, she left a note reading, "Something weird for my weird friend." I ripped away at the paper and eventually revealed an old box. I opened it up, and inside was an old and worn Ouija board. Jade recognised it, and we both looked at one another smiling. Shortly after, I heard little Ellie walk in. "Hey, where did you get that game?" Unfortunately, at this exact point, my mum came into the room, and an argument ensued. My mum was brought up Catholic, so she was clearly offended by the gift. She took it from me, and she hid it somewhere in her room. 2 nights later, and my mum was going to be coming home late from work, so I was left to watch my sisters. Jade and I had the idea to search Mum's room for the Ouija board. We knew where it would be, of course. Mum's closet. She hides everything in there, thinking we have no idea. And we did find it, right at the top corner. She hid it well, I'll give her that. We brought the Ouija board into the lounge and set it down on the coffee table. See, Mum always texts us ahead when she's on her way home, so that gives us plenty of time to put everything away. With everything ready, we started to play. I switched off the lights and lit a few candles. We put the talisman in the centre of the board and all placed a finger on it. Now there was just this small passage we were supposed to read prior to playing, and we did so simultaneously. "We welcome the forgotten, the lost, those waiting, those watching, to join our table. Speak and listen, and we will heed with attention. We welcome you now, entity or spirit. For now, we begin." The order of play was that we would ask questions and await a response. So we began by asking, "Is anyone there?" The room was filled with silence. The only thing you could hear was the building of a storm from outside. So I repeated, "Is anyone there?" We waited in anticipation. and slowly we started to feel the talisman twitch under our fingers. A soft buzz of electricity shot up through my arm. I know that we all must have felt it, as we all looked at one another with big eyes. It then jolted. Then it slowly, with our fingers atop, glided to the word yes. I felt a lump form in my throat. I looked over to Jade, and she decided to ask the next question. Are you here to be our friend? Again, quiet. A few moments later, and it started in the same way, moving from one letter to the next, and it slowly spelt out one word. Maybe. The front door burst open with a gust of cold wind, welcoming my mum. She walked in and turned on the light. Seeing what we were doing, she began screaming. She cried out how she forbade us from ever playing that game. So she took it from us. We cried to her to let us finish the game, which must have enraged her further, as she took hold of the board, tearing it apart, then throwing it outside into the rain. The house underwent a sudden cold silence. Later that night, the rooms and halls were filled out with only the faint sounds of the building rain from the storm outside. I was awoken by a gentle tapping at my bedroom window, which was followed by a soft knocking. I paid it no attention, knowing it was more than likely the storm outside. It did, however, continue for a while, until I sat up in my bed. At that exact moment, there was a deafening silence, with a deep darkness. Then, a louder knocking ensued. The windows and doors of the house were bombarded with a continuous barrage. I withdrew into my covers. It then simply began repeating itself continuously. Becoming quieter and fainter, echoing and amounting to a heavy silence. Then shortly after, it was then I heard a voice. I felt the room grow darker still, and now a sharp chill nips at my skin. I lifted the bedsheets, screaming, expecting it to have been a dream, until I heard each of my sisters cry out and scream, only just a moment after me. The following morning, we carried out about our routines. None of us spoke of what we heard or experienced that night. My friend Bess was coming over to stay only a few days later. My mum got along with Bess and saw her as a good influence. My mum clearly didn't look too well into things. I had told Bess what happened prior, and after having watched a few horror films herself, she reassured me that she would be able to end it. My mum was off and was going out with a few of her work friends for the New Year's Eve. So it was Bess, and of course my sisters. Bess had brought over another Ouija board, different to the one from before. I managed to keep hold of the talisman, and we started the game in the same way we did before, with that same chant. We even started with the same questions, but there was no reaction. No shot of electricity, no jolt across the letters. The room was silent. In fact, it was a very solid silence. Eddie was refusing to play. She was intentionally sitting away from us, on the other sofa across the room, pretending not to pay attention. We returned to the game, and Bess begins with a question. Where are you? We all looked at one another, amidst the same cold quiet. A few moments passed, when suddenly it was the front door. I decided to get up and check things through the peephole. There, as I drew closer and looked through, I noticed a small elderly lady with wild white hair covering her face. She was looking down at the ground, paying me no attention. She stood there motionless. Everyone was still seated. And after a moment of hesitation, I asked, "What do you want?" She looked up at me, and it was no face of a human being. It could only be explained as a monster. The only thing I could remember being anything human was her crazy hair and the shape of that twisted face. I screamed and ran back to the sofa. All at once, every window sounded like it was being scratched or knocked. We all huddled together, crying to be left alone. It continued for hours, until Mum came home. It was an immediate calm. My mum was in a state of panic. Every window was carved with thick scratches and cracks. The front door looked as though it had been hit continuously. The wood was dented and chipped. That moment as my mum had entered the room, a fast, sharp chill coursed through the house. And we all know we heard a whisper. Hey guys, Billy James here. I hope you enjoyed that terrifying tale. We do after all have many along the way. So please subscribe, like and share. And if you aren't already following us on Facebook, follow the links on our channel. And remember, the only thing scarier than a nightmare is waking up.